Xi and Putin. The world is watching closely now that Chinese leader Xi Jinping touched down in Moscow for a meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is on the table. Whether Xi Jinping can broker a ceasefire before the West, but on the backdrop of China's reported weapons sales to Russia, questions arise. Will the meeting really call for peace? And what about the arrest warrant out on Putin? That's over alleged war crimes in Ukraine. What do you think? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. All eyes are on the high-profile visit unfolding in Russia right now. Chinese leader Xi Jinping touched down in Moscow Monday to meet with Putin, and on the agenda, Ukraine.
If coming out of this meeting, there's some sort of call for a ceasefire, well, that's just going to be unacceptable because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date.
The West has been deeply skeptical of China's motives, noting Beijing has refused to condemn Russia and provided it with an economic lifeline. That's as other countries heap sanctions on Moscow. Xi Jinping's visit comes on the heels of the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for Putin. That's over alleged war crimes he committed in Ukraine due to the forced relocation of thousands of children from Ukraine to Russia.
Suggests that China feels no responsibility to hold the Kremlin accountable for the atrocities committed in Ukraine, and instead of even condemning them, it would rather provide diplomatic cover for Russia to continue to commit those very crimes.
As for what Xi and Putin's meeting signals to the West,
they want to find ways to give the impression that this is part of the peace diplomacy. And of course, most importantly, the thing that Xi Jinping had not been willing to do, which is to speak to Zelensky, it appears this will then take place after the visit.
This comes after Xi pushed Saudi-Iran peace talks to the forefront, an effort to secure his bid in the international order as a peacemaker. But those talks for peace come on the backdrop of reported weapons from China to Russia.
They know that this is a threshold crossing event, particularly the warnings that you've seen from the Europeans, but also from the United States. This would lead to a slew of sanctions. It would antagonize dynamics further. There would be a real cost to being seen in Europe as an enabler of security threats to Europe in such a direct way.
As the West's threats of sanctions and secondary sanctions rise, Xi Jinping continues his diplomatic dance. Back to the International Criminal Court's ruling. The European Union is calling it a game changer. European Union High Representative Joseph Borrell commented on Monday after the court charged Russian President Putin with war crimes in Ukraine.
If President Putin travels to one of the more than 130 countries who have signed this international treaty, he should be immediately arrested.
Russia is not a signature of the treaty. Joseph Borrell is de facto the foreign minister for the European Union. With the high-profile visit between Xi and Putin front and center, we hear from Gregory Copley, president of the International Strategic Studies Association, on what all this means. So Chinese leader Xi Jinping is in Moscow. He's visiting Vladimir Putin. Why is this such a big deal?
He now goes to the Russia-Ukraine dispute, where he has credibility with both Kiev and Moscow, which is something that the United States does not have. And he's in a position, as both of the leaders of President Zelensky in Ukraine and President Putin in Moscow have agreed that the PRC's peace proposals had merit and were worth discussing. Well, you and I know that looking at the actual proposal as it has come from Beijing offers nothing new and nothing tangible or substantive for either country at this stage, but it does give them the excuse to sit down and negotiate. Now, if President Xi can translate that into such as a prolonged ceasefire or the start of a new negotiating regime, then he will have gained enormous prestige and the United States will have lost it.
And on this kind of backdrop of potential peace talks, there are reports of China's giving weapons or ammunition to Russia in this Ukraine conflict. So what message is being sent there? What's maybe really happening here?
Well, I think Beijing has been very careful about not to be seen to be giving too much in the way of warfighting materiel to Moscow. And I'm not sure, in fact, that Moscow would benefit that much from whatever Beijing might offer, other than perhaps better unmanned aerial vehicles, drones.
And Gregory, speaking of this potential peace deal or ceasefire that Xi Jinping might be able to broker between Russia and Ukraine, what might we expect from the U.S. and allies?
Well, the U.S. and its allies will attempt at all costs to undermine that and to insist that Ukraine keeps fighting the war. And that could include some dangerous levels of escalation. We certainly are seeing some of the Eastern European former Soviet satellite states like Poland and the like increasing their supplies of lethal weapons into Ukraine. And even the United States has committed so much funding, equipment, and to a degree manpower into Ukraine that the reality is that Ukraine is on the edge of no longer being a proxy Western war against Russia. It's being seen as a direct war against Russia. And if that breaks through some magical line, it could become a declared real war between Russia and the NATO states. And that would be really, really dangerous for all concerned.
Lawmakers around the globe are taking aim at TikTok, but another app could soon be making waves, and it's TikTok's lesser-known sibling. Capcut is among the hottest apps in the U.S. right now, and it's owned by TikTok's Chinese parent, ByteDance. The free video editing tool simplifies making content and memes for social media, offering templates, filters, and visual and audio effects. Users say the polished videos it creates are more likely to go viral on platforms like TikTok, Meta, Instagram, and YouTube. And that popularity shows, with Capcut boasting more downloads in recent weeks than TikTok and more than 200 million monthly active users. Capcut brings in revenue from subscriptions and advertising, as well as charging users for cloud storage and certain extra features. It's less of a moneymaker for ByteDance than TikTok. Instead, its job is to grow popularity for the company. Despite the app's impressive growth, the global climate for Chinese-owned apps is turning hostile. TikTok is already banned in India, along with TikTok, Shine, WeChat, and Viva Video, while the US, EU, Canada, and Taiwan have outlawed the app from government-managed devices. That's largely over concerns that the app's global user data could end up in Beijing's hands. Capcut says it stores data in the U.S. and Singapore, the same as TikTok claims to. But as of now, Capcut has avoided the hot seat over its data handling. With more and more eyes on TikTok and Capcut, their Chinese parent company ByteDance is also being pulled into the spotlight. NTD's Sam Wang has more.
In the last few years, ByteDance has repeatedly shown allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. At the same time, Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, is accused of working with Beijing's internet police to censor users. What's more, ByteDance's hiring criteria gives CCP members priority. According to a list obtained by the Epoch Times, many managers and key persons in the companies are party members. Despite its close ties to Beijing, one of ByteDance's own programs has also been banned. In 2018, jokes platform 内涵段子 was permanently removed due to what the CCP called vulgar content. In response, the founder issued an apology and pledged to cooperate with authorities going forward. The company also hired more people for a certain internal department, which insiders says functions as a censorship machine. That's to remove content that doesn't align with Beijing's narratives, all in an effort to express your loyalty to the CCP. In 2018, China's Central Communist Party School held a group CCP admission oath with ByteDance employees, where they pledged to sacrifice it all for the party and the people and never turn away from the party. Sam Wang, NTD News, New York.
An unprecedented interaction between China and Taiwan. A former Taiwanese president will visit China next week. The trip will mark the first time a current or former Taiwanese leader has visited its communist neighbor since the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. Ma Ying-jeou served as president before current leader Tsai Ing-wen. As a senior member of the island's opposition party, Ma is still influential, and his visit to China is getting a lot of attention. A spokesman for Ma called it an effort to ease tensions between the self-ruled island and mainland China, a main goal of his party, though it's been criticized by Taiwan's ruling party as being pro-Beijing. Ma plans to visit China for 12 days, beginning March 27th. No current Taiwanese officials are expected to join the delegation. Ma will visit 5 cities, but Beijing is not on the list. His office declined to say if he would meet any Chinese officials or regime leaders, including Xi Jinping. But people familiar with the matter told local media the heads of the cities and provinces he will be visiting plan to meet with him. They're not mayors or governors, but rather Communist Party secretaries. A nuclear threat from North Korea Monday. Regime leader Kim Jong-un called for his country to stand ready to launch nuclear attacks at any time. He says it's to deter war, but South Korea says the North is the problem. Let's zoom in.
In comments carried by state media, Kim accused the U.S. and South Korea of expanding military drills involving American nuclear assets. State television today released photos showing him overseeing the North's latest missile test with his daughter. It's the latest in a flurry of weapons tests by Pyongyang in recent weeks as the U.S. and South Korea continue a month of their annual combined military drills. The North has reacted furiously to the drills, calling them a rehearsal for an invasion against it. Colonel Isaac Taylor, a spokesman for U.S. Forces Korea, says the drills are routine and purely defensive.
South Korea responded, saying North Korea's nuclear weapons development has escalated tensions on the Korean peninsula. Ernie Bot, it's China's answer to ChatGPT, a new app from Microsoft and a product of artificial intelligence. Users can throw questions at the Microsoft program to receive quick and often interesting answers. To keep up, Chinese tech company Baidu unveiled its much-anticipated AI chatbot Ernie on Thursday. But investors weren't impressed with Baidu's use of a pre-recorded demo and the lack of a public launch.
During our initial testing internally, we experienced the capabilities of Ernie Bot, and I feel that it's not perfect yet. So why are we unveiling it today? Because the market demands it.
Baidu said Ernie would only launch to a certain group of users from Thursday on. That's in contrast with ChatGPT, which was made free for full public use. The Chinese firm did showcase Ernie carrying out math calculations. It also spoke in Chinese dialects and generated a video and images with text prompts. But it seemed to fall short of expectations. Baidu's stock, listed on the Hong Kong market, closed over 6% lower after the presentation, cutting $3 billion from its market value. The founder of Taiwanese microchip giant TSMC is showing support for the U.S. That's as it works to slow China's advances in the cutting-edge industry. But he's also voicing concerns about some unintended consequences. Here are the details.
Speaking at an event in Taipei, TSMC founder Morris Chang expressed both support and reservations. He says he's concerned about the global supply chain and the reversal of globalization.
There's no question in my mind that in the chip sector, globalization is dead. Free trade is not quite that dead, okay, but it's in danger.
Chang said that he's alarmed at the possibility of increased prices and reduced ubiquity of chips that power the modern world.
When the cost goes up, the pervasiveness of chips will either stop or slow down considerably. So we're in a different game.
Beijing has recently ramped up diplomatic and military pressure against Taiwan. It considers the island part of Chinese territory and hasn't ruled out the use of force to take control of it. The Chinese Communist Party has never ruled Taiwan. The dispute has raised concerns about the fate of Taiwan's chip plants if China blockades or attacks the island. Taiwan produces the majority of the world's most advanced chips.
In a surprising move, a prestigious European research institute is breaking off ties with a top Chinese academy, closing a partnership of nearly 2 decades. One scientist calls it a scientific decoupling. Let's take a closer look.
The Paris-based Pasteur Institute has suspended its partnership with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. It also announced its withdrawal from a joint research institute in Shanghai. According to the journal Nature, the decision was made last December, following a year-long dialogue between the two sides. The Pasteur Institute was founded over a century ago by Louis Pasteur, the inventor of the pasteurization method and a founding father of microbiology. To date, 10 scientists at the institute have received the Nobel Prize. Since 2004, the French organization has co-led the Pasteur Institute of Shanghai with China, focusing on infectious disease research. The facility studied viruses like Ebola, HIV, and COVID-19. The Shanghai facility is now under Chinese supervision, and a Pasteur spokesperson said the name will change. Reasons for the breakup are still unclear, but a biologist working with the Shanghai Institute says it does potentially signal the end of an era of scientific partnership. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, Communist China has come under fire, both for concealing the origins of the virus and harsh containment measures on its people. Meanwhile, the West is seeking decoupling from the regime in multiple domains, as Beijing deepens ties with Russia and ramps up threats against Taiwan.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. The Biden administration seemingly poised to sign a pandemic accord with the World Health Organization. But what would it mean for America?
The Biden administration is, in fact, intent on surrendering our sovereignty to give them.
We spoke to Frank Gaffney, Vice Chairman of the Committee on the Present-Endangered China, for his take on what's happening. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.